as George says, nowadays with the knowledge we have in viticulture and the technology we have in the winery, is possible almost every year, not every year, but almost every year to produce beautiful wines. And you could declare vintage not
almost
not
every year.
almost every year,
Every year.
not every year, but before in each decade we declare three, 4 times. Now it's possible to declare 7, 8 without any problems and maintain the quality. And what change here classic for a single quinta is more the style of wine perhaps than the quality.
Well, the rule of 3, and many people are still stuck on this, and you know, everything moves forward and everything evolves, and you know, if it was still standing still, you know, we were making wines in lagars in distant quintas with hygiene that was somewhat questionable, you could probably go back to say, well, 3 years in 10, 30% would be a great year. It would, you know, you have all the conditions to make a great year, and that was the rule that there was. Today, the reality is, I mean, you know, everything is much better, so you can make more. The quantities are different because I remember the first vintage I worked on in declaration in London was 77, and at the time, I think we put out like 9,000, 10,000 cases. And those were the quantities that most people were putting out. Today, the quantities are smaller, but much, much greater wines, I think. And will be wines that in 50, 60 years, people, if there are any around, will be looking at saying, this is, you know, this has still got legs to keep going.
I'm here thinking about that, and I start to thinking perhaps the reason why that happens is before in the 60 and even in 70 years, most of vineyards indoor are field blend.
Yeah,
are field blend, and nowadays are planted block by block. So it's much easier now to maintain the quality, the consistency now than before, because in a field blend they have several varieties, and we don't know, some of them they goes well, other not so good. So it is more difficult to have a year where all the varieties goes well and have a vintage.
Right.
And that was, but this is the reason why is not so common, and when they produce it, the quantity are higher than now, because nowadays we could have a vineyard with Touriga Franca. Touriga Francesa will give a wonderful wine. Touriga Nacional doesn't go so well, but we could produce a vintage with more quantity of Touriga Francesa than Touriga Nacional. Perhaps that was the reason why we have higher consistency in terms of quantity and declarations of vintage than before.
That is because the advantage versus disadvantage of traditional field blend is obviously not all varieties ripen or react equally. And so if in a field blend, particularly where many varieties were not distinguishable or distinguished, there'd be a harvest made, and some would be overripe and some could be underripe. Whereas now you can block planting, you can basically pick when it's ripe.
For example, Touriga Nacional, now we plant clones by the different clones with different clones, different blocks with different clones, sorry. And of course, we choose always the best clones. So always, or usually, we have beautiful wines coming from that variety. Same happens with Touriga Francesa. And for example, now we have vineyards planted only with Sauzon, for example. Sauzon gives always a wonderful color. So if we choose well the different wines from the different blocks is easy to put. Is easy. Is I must. Is my job is not so easy as